Oh, thank you, Ohako. Again, however people enjoy playing, whatever makes them happy, that's what I think is good. The only thing I maintain, though, and people can think it's arrogant of me to say this, but I do maintain it. I think that the game must, like a good From Software game, must be beatable, melee only, hitless, and still be fun. I absolutely insist on that. Everything else built out around it can be good, but that to me is the mechanical core of the game around which everything is built, and I think that needs to be maintained. Doesn't that take the point of the game away? These games are meant to be a difficult puzzle, lets you adjust your playstyle in order to beat it. No. The puzzle is how you best want to play, but it should always be beatable, even if it takes a ridiculous amount of skill. It should always be beatable, soul level 1, hitless, without magic, whatever, just melee only, and everything else can be built around that. See, for me, again, this is just my opinion, but for me, an issue we have is the difference between choosing your own playstyle and being forced into certain playstyles. I think it's fun when you have the option to go, oh, maybe it'd be more fun to play like this or like that. I think that's good. And I think people should be able to play those ways. I do not care for the idea that with a boss, it's like, oh, this boss needs to have this done, otherwise the fight is basically unplayable. Stockholm Syndrome? No, it's just, when you take a look at how these games play, how the bosses and everything in this game, all of it, really, it's built around melee combat, and everything else is a fun addition to that. That doesn't mean it's worse, or that it's not that you're playing wrong if you don't do melee or whatever else, but I think it's pretty clear, like, in the same way that, like, many other games are definitively, like, a ranged combat game. Like Halo. Halo is a ranged combat game. There's a very good weapon that's a melee weapon, that energy blade, but it's, like, definitively a ranged combat game. What about the Carrion Study Hall? They're ranged, but the game is built around you being able to still fight them in melee. Oh, gotcha, boy. Even when the enemies are at range, the game is designed to be fun and satisfying and playable when you're running up to them melee. Aren't I anti-jump? Oh, I just don't jump. I don't think there's anything wrong with jumping. No, Shiloh, I'm not saying that you have to do a playstyle requirement. You can play however you like. I'm only saying that I think the game should be beatable under those conditions. Hitless, soul level 1, melee only. That's it. That doesn't mean you have to play that way. I can't play hitless. You think I can beat this game hitless? Not if I tried for a million years. I'm trying to think of like a good comparable example, but there are a few games that have this level of design discipline. The Witcher does not have any level of design discipline with its gameplay. Don't you get me started. Okay. You know how in Super Meat Boy, for those of you who have played Super Meat Boy, the main character, Super Meat Boy, can beat every level. He is capable of beating every level. There's nothing that the main character, Super Meat Boy, can't do. Now, there are other characters you can unlock that have slightly different speeds, weights, abilities that allow them to complete some levels easier. I think that's fine. However, it would bother me a lot if there was a level that couldn't be beaten by Super Meat Boy. And when you look it up, it's like, oh, I see, you're intended to go unlock this character and then play them in this level. Does that make any sense? There's nothing wrong with playing those other characters, whether they're easier or harder, whether they make a level more or less difficult, but the game is Super Meat Boy. That's the game that you're playing. So if there's a level that can't be beaten with Super Meat Boy, it's like, okay, like, alright, time to... Like, you could try that for hours and hours, and it's like, oh, the game needs me to have the hover ability here. Yeah, Binding of Isaac isn't really discipline, it's design. Your runs can turn into whatever by the end of all that.
What about Celeste? You can beat the game without 95% of the tech. You don't need to know water or corner boosting or much of the speed tech to finish the game.
That's true. Though I do think that's all part of, like, the one character, right? Because you're building on the core there, but it's stuff that gets organically introduced, as opposed to it being like a character build that suddenly becomes non-viable. Really, to me, it's just about being fun. You know what I mean? I guess this could speak to my bias, but I think it's a defensible bias. If there was a boss in a Dark Souls game where magic only couldn't beat it, you know, and you had to do a little bit of meleeing, I think that's fine. I think that's fine and reasonable, because everyone has a melee weapon. Even magic builds and range builds have a melee weapon, because there are melee weapons that scale with int and faith. But if there was a boss that required you to pull out some kind of ranged ability, yeah, I don't know. Have I ever played Spelunky? Yes, but I didn't like it too much. What if FromSoft decided to make a ranged-focused game? I think it would be awesome to see them try. Like, really, really, really cool to see them try. Imagine a game that has the feel of Sekiro, but instead of having melee attacks, you have like blunderbusses and like flintlock pistols and stuff. I've never played Armored Core, but I've always kind of dreamed. Do you guys remember when Platinum Games made like a Korra game? I've always dreamed of a game that had really like free-flowing dynamic movement. Like Sekiro, I think, would be a pretty good like base template to talk about there, because you can jump pretty high and move around and do lots of fun stuff. But something like that, except where the combat wasn't based around melee, and it wasn't based around targeted range combat, but instead you had area of effect abilities that you had to like ground target the way you would do in like an MMO. So like it wouldn't like be done with mouse drag or whatever, but it would be like you jump in the air and then you'd like hit a button and there'd be like a split second pause as like a line rectangle ground target appeared in front of you that you could like angle left right a bit, and then when you released it, you like, I don't know, whatever, let a gusset of flame out, or like a torrent of shuriken, or just whatever cool shit. Something like that. I feel like it could be really satisfying. I can never look at chat, because every time I say something like this, chat's like, like this thing, and it's something totally different from what I'm thinking, and I get so triggered. Holy shit. Basically, I guess I kind of like the idea of playing a game where you play a little bit like the bosses in these games. Does that make any sense? Like, because when you're playing this, like, you lock on target, your attacks are short-ranged in front of you, ranged attacks are usually targeted, you know. But when bosses in this game, like, you can imagine, I'm trying to think of, like, a good one. Like the Beast Cleric or whatever. Just anything, you know. They have, a really just dynamic moveset. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, like AoE attacks and stuff. You mean you each play by the same rules? Well, no, I just like you could have like different types of fights as well. Like group fights in these games, I don't think they feel bad, but like they've never been incredible, I don't think. They've never reached the level of one-on-one fights. But imagine if you had like a wide range of AoE and single target attacks, and there would be enemies that would like be small and cluster and have a small amount of health, and enemies that you'd have to focus more single target stuff on, and